Originally, the Linda Vista Hospital was the Santa Fe Railroad Hospital, or it was also known as the Santa Fe Coast Lines Hospital. Why was it titled such? Because it was at once a hospital for employees of the Santa Fe Railroad. It was built in 1904 to treat injured railroad workers, and at the time of its original construction, it had 150 beds. So it was, I think, 6 stories, 150 beds. Apparently, in the 19th century, there were a lot of associations and funds that provided services to members on dues-paying basis, including burial expenses and financial support for injured or laid-off workers. It was like healthcare and life insurance before there was such a thing. Santa Fe Railroad, because they were profitable, was able to offer that to employees. The Santa Fe Railroad Company had several emergency care facilities, the first being in Needles, California, which is in the Mojave Desert, I believe on the way to Vegas. And they also followed that with locations in Barstow, which is on the way to Vegas, and San Bernardino. LA and San Francisco were able to house long-term patients. They were bigger hospitals, like full. The other ones were just emergency rooms. Before the Santa Fe Railroad Hospital was built, patients were taken to the Sisters of Charity Hospital. I couldn't really figure where that was at. But as the line extended, the company realized they were in need of their own facility. The property is situated on a little less than 4 acres. It's kind of a big lot. I kept passing by it. When I read that it was near Hollenbeck Park, I kind of knew the park by sight. So when I looked it up, I was like, oh yeah, that park. There's not a hospital right there. There's a hospital right there. I'd passed by it like a million times. The hospital had a surgical suite and a psych ward, among other things. Going to come into play a little later. Okay. The size of the property also allowed for the creation of a park on the grounds to be built for patients to enjoy, and they also wanted the freshest meals for their patients, so they raised cows for milk, for butter, for beef. They also used their bones as musical instruments. I'm just kidding. As well as chickens, and they grew their own vegetables.
They used the vegetables as instruments.
Yeah, those carrots were great drumsticks.
Can you ever play the rutabaga?
Paul McCartney and John Lennon came and they were eating beets there, and they're like, something about these beets. Anywho, that was a horrible joke. Yeah. I don't even know if that was a joke.
It was just history. I say that as Ringo. We just lost Ringo Starr as a fan.
Unsubscribe. Peace and love. Anyways, everything's going good. Yeah. In 1924, the hospital was raised and rebuilt, most likely because Santa Fe was becoming really profitable, so they decided to expand. So they completely destroyed the hospital that was there before and decided to rebuild it. It took 12 years reconstructing the facility, but by George, they did it and renamed it the Linda Vista Community Hospital. And from that point on, 1937, it was the Linda Vista Hospital. And once again, we should state, the Great Depression and World War II happened, and it all changes. All that good fortune goes down the drain. East LA was slowly transforming into a less affluent area, urban, and the crime rate rose. Lowered funding at the hospital resulted in less staff to treat the influx of patients, and as a consequence, the hospital's death toll was rising. That's something I keep reading about, the hospital's inexplicable high death rate. It gets mentioned several times throughout several readings. Some of it, they say, because of mistreatment and abuse, which is kind of strange. I couldn't find any reports on anything like that, but all these people who were talking about it said, oh yeah, there was a lot of mistreatment and abuse there. There were a lot of weird stories. There was one that really made me not smile. What's the opposite of smile and laugh?
There is no opposite.
My body doesn't react to anything that's opposite. Oh, horror? Yeah, I'm gonna laugh it off. One night back in the 1980s, a Los Angeles gang member was shot and rushed to Linda Vista. A man by the name of Dr. Edwards was in charge of the surgery. Dr. Edwards had done everything in his power to save the gang member's life. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough. When Dr. Edwards left the building to go home, he was confronted by the gang in the parking lot and shot to death. There's a lot of stories like that. Okay, there's like 3 stories like that. The 70s and 80s saw a huge influx of gangs in East LA, which of course sent a steady stream of violence-induced hospital needs, gunshot wounds and knife wounds. All of it went to Linda Vista's emergency room. The neighborhood was getting worse, as was the survival rate of patients admitted. It became the hospital of the hood, and that's never an easy thing. It's never good to be that hospital that all the gang members go to.
Orderlies in the hood. In the hood.
In the hood. Apostrophe N.
Sorry.
Yeah. By 1980, the Santa Fe Railroad, who still owned the Linda Vista Hospital, decided to opt out of providing direct health care to their employees, and they sold the hospital to a private company. Scary.
Isn't that spooky?
Privatization. The 80s brought a change in how Medicare reimbursements worked, and the hospital suffered
They all came with a perm.
They all came with a perm and power suits. Huge shoulder pads on suit jackets. CD. That Aha song.
You know the one.
You know, they only had one.
Let's sing it right now. Copyright infringement.
The huge increase increase in poor and uninsured patients caused the hospital to have to stop accepting ambulances in the emergency room. This was 1988. Many doctors at the hospital also started leaving to affluent neighborhoods, wimps. Finally, Linda Vista shut the emergency room down, which was a major step towards the end, and then they shut the entire hospital down in 1991. The place was abandoned in a hurry, a lot like Rancho Los Amigos. Medical records, patient information, hospital supplies were all left behind, but that wasn't all that was left behind. So after this...
Keys.
My shoe!
This is the strange case of Greg's missing booty when he was a little boy.
I got one. Where's the other? Where's the other? Did it fly off when I was on the Batman ride at Six Flags because your feet are dangling?
Or was it in Yorba Linda?
Everything's Yorba Linda. So after the hospital shuts down, many film productions began using the hospital as set locations. In the Line of Fire, starring Clint Eastwood, was filmed there. Outbreak was filmed there. Children of the Corn 666 was filmed there.
No.
End of Days with Arnold Schwarzenegger was filmed there. And many people working on production began feeling things, hearing things around the hospital. Overnight security and production crews were seeing darting shadows. They could hear unexplained murmurs, crying in the night. Many people...
It's just Arnold Schwarzenegger.
He just can't get the career back. He knew it. By End of Days, he knew it. It was the End of Days. Many people have reported to have been physically alerted to the presence of spirits, shoving and like cold touches on the neck. 3 spirits in particular have been sighted on multiple occasions. A little girl lurks in the surgical room. A young woman paces the hallways of the 3rd floor. And an orderly in a white short-sleeve shirt is lurking by the windows. I was reading a story. I forget what movie was being filmed, but a young woman who was a PA saw that. She went inside, saw the apparition of the orderly, came outside and threw up.
Must have been her first day.
I haven't seen the episode of Ghost Adventures because, like I said, I didn't want to just reiterate a TV show. But they have a lot of stuff. They reported a lot of stuff, and they recorded some stuff too. In the surgical suite, where apparently many improper procedures were done, they saw a full-bodied manifestation of a girl, as well as responsive tapping noises upon their second visit. So is there someone in here? And they hear tapping in response. She just wants to sing. That's her unfinished business. The psych ward, room 323, has a lot of spookies.
Not spookies.
Not spookies. Please God, not spookies. I'll kill myself. They have a 20-second growl and a no leave recorded on their website, on the Ghost Adventures website. You can barely hear it, but there is a weird like, and you're like, oh boy. But you know, I always take all that stuff with a grain of salt. So
because it brings out the sweetness.
Yeah, because it brings out the sweetness of ghosts. They claim to have suffered from scratching at the back of the neck and shoving out of that room as well, of the psych ward. They also reported a green light in that room as well, like a green beam.
Maybe it's just a metaphor for the American dream. The Great Gets.
Don't Fitzgerald me in front of everybody.
I'm just Zeldaing you. It's not F. Scott. Speaking of insane asylums, we're taking down everybody. Ringo, Zelda down. Fitzgerald, and thousands of unclaimed bodies knocking at our door. Peace and love. I brought the armies of hell.
There's a John Lennon joke in there. I just can't pull out. I was trying to just come up.
I still couldn't reunite with John.
He's a general in the army of hell. Yeah, all over the hospital, there's bad vibes and weird energy. A lot of cold spots. People say you can be in one part of the hospital and turn a corner and the temperature will suddenly change out of nowhere. According to them, the Ghost Adventure team, they think the hauntings are from that influx of mistreated patients from the 80s of gang members. And if that's so, if the spirits have unfinished business, I'm pretty sure they just want to be jumped out of the gang so they can move out into the afterlife.
Blood in, ectoplasm out. For a guy that hasn't seen this Ghost Hunters thing because he didn't want to be influenced by it, you sure are quoting it a lot.
They had the most information. Everybody else was like, I heard a sound. I'm like, no, I need more than that. After all these years, the hospital is now being repurposed and there's renovations. They're going to start using it again as apartments for seniors in an attempt to push the dead closer to the dying.
If you can relate to any of us, it's these ones.
Please don't take your family members there. I beg you. Sponsored by Linda Vista Community Hospital.